And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Beverly Ketchum, who felt at home during her near-death experience. Beverly, thank you for joining me and welcome.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you inviting me onto your podcast.
Well, Beverly, if you don't mind, let's start on the day you died and go from there.
All right. So the day was Sunday, March 8th, 2020, Women's Day. And it was a beautiful sunny day. My daughter and my son-in-law had asked me to take photographs because I'm a amateur photographer. I also do photos for birth as well, and moms and dads. But this particular photo session was going to be of my daughter and her partner for their real estate license business card, and then also on their website. And they wanted something outdoors, nice, really pretty. And so we were going to go by a park nearby their home. And I wore a beautiful, I love this color magenta. I love really good, like right now you can tell I have purple on. I love anything with colors. And it was gray, kind of like a baseball t-shirt with jeans and tennis shoes. So I got my camera ready to go. And I said goodbye to my husband. And he said, gave me a kiss. And he said, drive safe, honey. And I said, okay. So I got in my car and literally traveled, I'd say maybe it's like an eighth of a mile from my home. It's across a busy highway. And while I was turning onto the busy highway from, it was going east and west. So I made a left-hand turn. I was proceeding east, and there was a lot of traffic on the opposite side of me on my left-hand side proceeding west. So as I turned, I noticed behind me there's this car, white car, and she was rather close to me. So I turned my blinker on right away so she knew, and I indicated that I was going to make a left-hand turn into my daughter's home. As I did that, she hit my car and threw me over to oncoming traffic. Her brakes apparently had gone out after the accident. I heard all this in the details from the police report. While I went over the center divider, or the yellow, line to go turn into the left-hand driveway and the oncoming traffic, there was a van that was going about 55, they said, and it hit me once. I spun around. The car that hit me from behind hit me again. And then I got hit one more time in the very front of the car. So as I got hit on the second one, I believe it was, I just remember feeling kind of like I was floating, but the car was just engulfed in this white smoke, which I believe was, I know it was probably the airbags that were deploying. And as it did that, I hovered up over and then through the top of the car, looking downward. But I'm not connected at all to this person that's getting tossed around in the car as it's spinning around. So I'm just kind of floating up, minding my own business, but curious, not thinking, that's me in this car that just got in a really bad accident. So I noticed my daughter had come, but I knew it was my daughter, but just didn't have any feelings towards it or have feelings towards that person that got tossed around in the car. And she had drugged me out of the car. And noticed that I was not breathing from her witnessing everything, and that my eyes were this kind of gray color and they were in the back of my head. So she put me on the asphalt as I'm watching all this, hovering up above. And then I'm looking at my shirt, Jeff, and I don't know why in your near-death experience, at least for me, I don't know about other people, little teeny things mean a lot. And it almost like you can connect the dots. And one of them was the t-shirt that I was wearing. It was a magenta t-shirt. And I'm like, I remember looking at it going, oh, that's my favorite t-shirt. That's my favorite color. Well, that's me in this near death. Like, what is going on? Like, I just finally connected the dots. Right after that, I did not go through a tunnel. I just floated, and it was to the left and then upward really fast. So as I'm floating upward, which was like not like lightning, but it was really, really fast. And it wasn't scary, didn't feel uncomfortable. I felt no pain. But as I was floating, I came upon a being to my right. And as I was next to this being in this area, that literally the thing that I looked at mostly were these clouds that was about, I would say, 100 meters away. It was pretty far in the distance, but as I started more in this dimension, which I call, it was getting closer. And I'm just trying to figure all this out as I was next to this being. And as I'm next to this being, I'm looking down, and I remember thinking, where's my body? I don't have a body. I have like almost not a shadow, but it's just like a being, there's nothing there. So it just confused me. I just didn't understand what was going on. I didn't think I was dead. I didn't think I was having a near-death experience. I just thought I was having some kind of awakening at the time. So I had remember asking myself, what is going on? Where am I? And the being had said, this is your basically your homecoming. And I told them, it's an amazing place, and I told them that I did not want to leave because it just felt so. I can't even describe it other than a feeling of overjoy, a feeling of oneness and connection, and this feeling of, oh, I'm supposed to be here. So I told the being, great, I don't want to go. I want to stay. They had told me that it's not really something that I have a choice in this matter. I don't get a choice of staying or coming or going, and that you have things to do. And basically, your life purpose is not completed. And it just was all confusing to me. And as we're having this little conversation, the sunset, it's kind of like a sunset, but these hues of orange, gray, and gold. And it was almost like glistening in the distance. It just kept getting closer and closer and closer to me. And as I was getting closer, I'm kind of zoning in on these 6 beings that are standing kind of like in an apex. And I'm thinking, I know these people. Like, I didn't know if they were aliens. I didn't know if they were, guides or goddesses or whatever. I just knew that I belonged with them. Some were taller than others. They were kind of massive. I kind of get the impression now that one of them is my spirit guide. That's very familiar to me now. At the time, I didn't know. One of them seemed more kind of like my relative, my grandmother, but they almost look like aliens to me, and that's the only way I can describe them. They weren't like angels, like some people say. And I remember kind of talking to them telepathically, like, why am I here? And the word that kept coming to me after my near-death experience, not at that time when I was talking to them telepathically, was Pleadians. And I've never heard of Pleadians. And apparently my granddaughter had told me about Pleadians after my near-death experience. A lot of things would come through after I had that experience that kind of connected the dots. So the Pleadians are just a really amazing type of alien that have been here for many, many, many years. And I think for me, I just felt very connected to them. And so while I was staring at them, I remembered zeroing in and just looking very intently at their clothes. So for me, the way I describe it is they almost kind of look like monk robes, those really nice monk robes, but they're very thin, and they have these glistening threads of gold through them. And I couldn't make their faces out, but I could see that the shapes of their expressions were inviting, calm, loving. And anytime I would say something or I would think something telepathically, they would always turn their head and, respond to me in this way, or telepathically say that everything is fine, you're okay. And after that, I had kind of argued a little bit with, I guess it was my guide on the right-hand side. I did not see Jesus. Like I said, I didn't see any angels, but the person on the side of me, which was a being, who definitely did not have a shape, was more intent. His expressions, it wasn't a male or a female, but they had beautiful eyes, or almost like kind of greenish line, but they were like a beautiful color. And I just remember looking in their eyes and asking them if I could please stay, because this is so inviting and I feel like I'm at home. And, I was thinking to myself, I'm really tired of doing stuff on Earth. And they just said, we're not allowing you to stay. We're asking you to go home. And as soon as we started telepathically talking about my family and what I've done here on Earth, in seconds, I literally went through, and I've described this to another person. It was a slip and slide, is the only way I can describe it. It was a big slip and slide, and it sounded like a rushing sound of water going through a top tunnel, and just going through. And as I was going through, it was almost like, not lightning, but sparks of light were coming through as I'm going through in this tunnel. That was like a slip and slide. And I ended up literally feeling me going through the top of my head and then hearing like a pop. As I went into my body, I never felt such excruciating pain. I remember feeling so much pain. I wasn't able to talk, obviously, because of the head injury, but I couldn't hear because the head injury. I could hear people as if I was underwater. That kind of, that sound that's like you're underwater and you don't fully hear anybody talking. But I could tell mentally that this was not a good situation. I could feel blood like just dripping on my face, and then I was out again. I don't remember anything after that. But when I did go into my body, I just remember going, and it hurt so bad. And from the top of my head to my toes, I was in pain. And I had so many injuries. I had injuries as far as my sternum being fractured in 3 places. I had a contusion on my heart. So that's what was pretty amazing, because my daughter, normally when you have an accident, you're not supposed to pull people out. You're supposed to leave them there. But basically my doctor said that I wouldn't be alive if my daughter didn't like bring me out and kind of let me have some air and, have my rib cage off my heart, because my heart was so bruised. And that's probably why I was out for a while, because of the contusion on my heart. And then I had fractures on both sides, more so on my left side. It was 4 ribs that were fractured. Right side was left. And my knee, I broke my fingers, just all kinds of stuff. So like I said, when I came to down on the earth and I was on the asphalt, I don't really remember feeling the ground or anything other than all the pain. And I do remember at one point when I was feeling the pain, looking to the left of me, and it was very dark and shadowy, but it was the shadow of my daughter, and she's got gorgeous hair, and she was looking down at me, and I could make out her face that was just a horrific expression. Like you could tell that she was really not doing well. But beyond her, Jeff, was that same being, and it was a lot of light behind him that was up in my other dimension, heaven, whatever you want to call it. And I remember the being just telling me constantly, "You're going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine." Just soothing me and calming me, and that was it. And like I said, I went out, but during that was maybe just a few seconds of that. So after my accident, I remember asking everybody, "Who was that guy behind you that had like a bald head and he was wearing those shirts that are like from Costa Rica or Mexico that have those pretty threads in them, and they're that really nice linen material." He had that on, and he had these gorgeous eyes. And they're like, "I have no idea who you're talking about." But it those were the things that really stuck out to me. And when I got to the hospital, apparently, well, I don't really remember other than waking up like the next day kind of in a lot of pain, and just things just kind of started happening where words of knowledge would come to me, or there would be somebody was in pain in the room, and I would call, I didn't have a button or anything. But when the nurse would come, I'd try to talk to her as well as I could that, this person across from me needs help, or somebody lost their wallet, and I told them exactly where it was. At one point, the next night, I went out again because they were doing, I had my heart, it's called markers when your heart is in bad shape. So EKG technician will come in every half hour just to make sure your heart is getting back to rhythmia and it's, healing, and you're kind of more stable. And he asked me, he was from, where was he from? He told me, wasn't from Nigeria. He was from Nigeria. And he said, may I pray with you? And I'm thinking, this is really odd. So as soon as he said that, I went out again, and it was just for a very short time. But again, in my hospital room, it was like an apex of angels or beings or whatever coming towards me. And as soon as they came towards me, I'm like, this is great. I get to go. But they just went right past me. And I'm like, no. And I woke up again. But so that was it for the near-death experience part. But the recovery and the experiences I had afterwards, I ended up losing my job because that was during COVID. So the week I was able finally to go home was when everything closed down, and they wanted to put me in a convalescent home, and my family said absolutely not. So they had to help me. I mean, I couldn't even use the restroom. I couldn't take a shower. I couldn't eat. I couldn't bring my hands to my face. I couldn't walk. So I am so grateful for them. They were so helpful during that transition. So when I finally did heal, it was about 6 months later where I was able to go down the stairs and get in my garden. I took classes because I got laid off during COVID. Everybody's job was kind of different. And I was able to take classes, and I learned ceramics I never knew I could do. I started selling them. I started playing wooden flute. I just did all these things that I normally didn't know I had talents for. And for me, Jeff, it was so healing doing all those types of art, and yeah, it just healed me so much. And I really enjoyed it. And I would never take the near-death experience away, because for me, I feel like now, since I lost my job at the college, I am doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. And the work I do is with the community at high risk, and it's with babies, and it's just very healing for me to be able to help other people that need those types of services. So yeah, that's, other than, I think I had mentioned earlier when we talked about my husband having a vision prior to my near-death experience. That was really interesting. When I had left, he had a vision of my accident, and that was something new that we've never just experienced before. So yeah, it's been quite a journey. And like I said, I would never change it. It was hard, but it was an important one. And if I could help other people, it would be beneficial for all of us to be kind. And, in this life right now, it's just really, that's my lesson through all of it, that we just really need to take care of one another. And it's just truly about caring.
Beverly, thank you for sharing your experience with us.
You're welcome.
At any point during your NDE, was your body physically dead and they had to restart your heart?
No. I mean, I'm pretty sure when my daughter took me out of the car, I was, because she said I wasn't breathing. I didn't have a pulse. But I did come back when I went through the tunnel. And I felt like I was trying to take a breath when I went through the tunnel and went back into my body. But they never used that except in the hospital. They were doing it. They did what's it called? The paddles. They did have to do that one, just for that one particular incident. So, but it was both of them were very kind of short, which is, to me, during that whole experience, it seemed like it was a really long time. but it wasn't. It was very, very short. So yeah, just at the hospital when I was praying with the technician that helped me. So.
Since your NDE, have you gone outside or been outside and seen UFOs or had any contact with the Pleiadians?
Mostly in my dreams and when we're camping. And what's amazing is before this even happened, I have had, it was one contact when we were in Durango Springs. It was so strange because we didn't know that they did a film there through a gentleman who's, I don't even know his name. That's one thing about brain injury. I forget stuff a lot. Except for my NBA. It was an area that is all flat. And I remember looking through the window and asking everybody else if they saw what I was seeing. By the time they came into the room, they weren't able to see it. But I almost feel like trying to think if there's anything else while I'm camping. That was probably the most vivid when we were Durango Springs scene, and it was mostly a feeling, but also like an energy. Does that make sense? Like that's how it felt to me.
Mm-hmm. How do they appear to you in your dreams?
Well, mostly for me, they're depending on what they are. So if they're Pleadians, they're very tall to me, and they don't have faces. They don't, as far as male or female, and their heads are a little bigger, and their body is kind of thin, but they're not human like, but in a sense they are, because they have expressions through their face, and they're super tall. So yeah, they're very different than other aliens. I've only known aliens like on TV. So,
Would you say they're about 10 feet tall?
at least, yeah, some 8, some 10, which is pretty wild. And they're a light color. They're not green or anything like that. And their eyes are very beautiful. They're very big. And sometimes when I have a dream of them, it's almost like we're family, but I don't know. I try to get messages from them, but I haven't really. I think what happened, I kind of shut things down for a little while because it started getting a little bit too much for me. Things would happen or I'd get a knowing, and it was just little things, and it just got a little bit overwhelming for me. So it doesn't happen as much anymore. But when I do it, or when I do have a dream, I'll actually ask if I can have a dream about them. I'll try to ask for a message or maybe to help someone in the family. And sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't, but it's very rare. I haven't had very many dreams lately. After my accident, I had a lot of dreams. I used to have this bird that would come sit on the windowsill after my accident on the second story, just sit there, pecking on the glass. Okay, friend. Animals, they kind of liked me more. It was just the weirdest energy I had after my near-death experience. And it's really mellowed out, but yeah, I do Reiki. So I'm a Reiki practitioner too. And I love that energy. And that has intensified so much that people kind of go, whoa, what is going on? The heat from my hands. And I really contribute that to my near-death experience, almost, that I feel that that's part of what I'm supposed to do too. So
During your NDE, you first went to this place and you were with one being,
mm-hmm.
and you didn't want to leave.
No.
Do you think that being was also a Pleiadian or something else?
I think honestly that's more of a spirit guide. He just seems more of a guidance to me, and I call him a he only because he seems more male than female. So I don't. Yeah, for some reason the other ones seemed more. Well, they were Pleadians to me, but yeah, it seemed more like a guide. And I do believe in spirit guides now, before I didn't, but now I do. So no, I think it was more of like a guide.
Can you recall what that place looked like?
It's not like here. The colors aren't like here. The colors are indescribable. It looked very vast. And when I was there, I didn't tell you this part, which was kind of important too. I remember when I was looking at my body, I was fascinated because as I looked up, I could look beyond the dimension I was in, like all over the world. And it's kind of hard to wrap your brain around that, or to think that that's can happen. Also, I could look up and down, around, like 360. So when I was actually concentrating more on the Pleadians, it was more nature. It was more, it's kind of like where I like to go, like the ocean, but it was in a dimension, and there was more clouds, and they were beautiful clouds, and it was gold and grays behind them. It was almost like it was shooting out. It wasn't like a sunset. It was more like a sunrise. But there wasn't buildings. There wasn't, cars. It was just an area of tranquility, and where I could just go and almost like, not floating, but transport myself. If I thought I'm going to get closer, I'll get closer. But yeah, it wasn't like a nature, other than like kind of being like a nature area, but it wasn't green. It sounds really weird. Trying to think in my mind's eye. It was more so just, to me, it was another dimension, almost like a heaven, clouds, and beautiful colors.
Do you think it's possible that you are also a Pleiadian having a human experience?
Well, I know that most of my life, as I was younger, I never thought I was belonged here. And there's a couple of reasons for that. My mom, basically didn't want me as a child. So that makes sense why I wasn't supposed to be here. But I've often thought that there's always more to this planet. If people think there's not, it's kind of unusual to me. So possibly now, after everything that's happened to me, I'm sure that we're connected on some level. So,
Do you feel that the Pleiadians are in control of the afterlife? And if so, what do you think about that? I mean, our
yeah,
afterlife is controlled by aliens.
yeah. I don't know so much if they're the main ones that are controlling it, because, like I said, my spirit guide, I believe, to the right of me, um, was there as well. So with the Pleiadians being in control, um, I just think we're all one. We're all part of each other, and maybe that they're an extended part of our family. Especially for me, feeling so at home in that dimension. I don't feel it as a sense of control. I feel it more as a sense of extended family.
It appears to me that you had some sort of ability, maybe even psychic abilities, but you decided to shut it down.
Mm-hmm.
Is it still shut down for you now?
No, not really. But what's interesting is when I was younger, I had these abilities, and I thought everybody just had them. For instance, I'll give you a short story. When my great grandmother, who was my favorite person in my whole universe at the time, she was kind of like my second mom. She was older, so we did everything with her. We baked, we learned how to do sewing. Actually, have her sewing machine now. So yeah, she was just a big piece of my life and an important piece of my life. And she was very spiritual. She wasn't religious. She was spiritual. So I feel like I received a lot of that from her. The intuition. She always told me, "You have a knowing. Everybody has it. You just forget about it." And I just thought, well, this is kind of weird. I didn't understand at the time, but it occurred to me when she had passed away, how we found out was back in the 70s, we used to have these green phones that were avocado. All the furniture was avocado. The washes were avocado. That was just a thing back then. And I specifically remember my mom picking up the avocado receiver from the wall. And I said, Grandma passed away. And she turned to me and said, that's a horrible thing to say. Take that back. And I said, mm-mm. She was in a rocking chair. She told me. It's just I had a knowing. So my mom gets on the phone, and sure enough, it was her mom saying, your grandma had passed away. So there's been several things that happened, and it's always circulated around death. My brother as well, when he had passed away, I was gardening. He was supposed to come to my house that day. It ended up, I remember being in the garden and a knowing, somebody telling me, my spirit guide, whatever, saying, you're never going to see, your brother again. This is the, and as soon as that sentence came through my mind, my daughter brought the phone out to me, and I said, I don't want to take the phone. My brother Raymond is gone, and I don't want to talk to anybody. And they were like, how do you know that? I said, I don't know, you guys. My daughter has it too. She knew that one of our good friends' daughter had passed away. And when I went to her to tell her after her father told us in the house, she said, I know Celine's gone, and she's got the same thing. So that's always been with us, and the knowing's been with us. And I think now, I think I'm more open to it because I'm not afraid like I used to be after the near-death experience. It's created so much more positivity for me, and I do things now from my heart instead of being scared, and also through the guidance of love. That has been a big one for me. But I did shut it down just because I get busy, and then so I'll jot things down. With me, it's more of a knowing or intuition, and I'll jot it down, and then later on it'll all make sense. But literally right after my near-death experience, it was just coming at me left and right, and it just too much because I was trying to heal too.
Is that some of your ceramic work behind you?
No, it's not. I have some here on the table though, if you want to see.
Sure. Is any of it NDE inspired?
Yes. So this is kind of like I don't know which one to call it, like a Victorian pot. Mm-hmm. And it has my grandmother's old-fashioned crocheted patterns. So I used her roller, and her doilies. She used to make doilies. I used her rolling pin, and I pressed it into the clay. So it just came out beautiful like that.
Cool.
Yeah. So I had a little website for a while, and an Instagram, and we had an art exhibit, and I used to sell them. So yeah, that was fun. Haven't had time to do it lately, but too many bursts.
Too many what?
Too many bursts.
Bursts?
Too many babies being bursts. Yeah.
Oh, births. Oh, births.
Yeah.
Births. I thought you said birds or something. So I was like, what? If you had a friend that was suffering over the loss of a loved one, what type of advice would you give?
If they had already passed on?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I would say that they're never gone. And I would give them the advice of always trying to communicate with them. And, like I tell my grandchildren, my little ones in our family, they're always in your heart. And I think it's important for them to know that they're a piece of you no matter what. And they're there for a reason during the time of your life, that especially friends. Family, of course, are a lot different, but they're there for a reason. And to be grateful for the times that you did have, and hopefully the fond memories of the things that you did together will carry you through your grief, because grief is really difficult for people. And knowing that, you have all those memories is important.
Beverly, after watching this podcast, people may want to reach out to you and ask you questions. Are you open to that?
Absolutely. Yes, of course.
What's the best way to reach you?
They can reach me through my doula email. So it's doulas, DOULAS, with heart. gmail.com.
Do you have anything that you're working on that you want people to know about?
Right now, I'm so busy doing, the dualist stuff. I am working on, and I believe I told you this earlier, a cohort with my daughter. She's through the agency we work at to empower other women that want to become doulas, and it's a free program. It's a 20-week program for community-based doulas to become doulas, which is very intense and extensive, and then a 4-week professional aspect of it, plus how to bill. So that's been very important to us to be able to create another women of another tribe to get out there and help the world, because it really does start with being born.
Before we finish up, can you leave us with one last positive message?
Don't take life for granted. Always try. For me, like I said, I speak from my heart, but I also guide myself through love. And don't take yourself too seriously. Enjoy this life that you have here today. Important one. And you have a purpose.
Beverly, thank you for your message, and thank you for being my guest.
Oh, thank you, Jeff. I appreciate it.
And I appreciate you. Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.